Compile Heart has many games in their library that use a similar engine. Just take a look at Hyperdimension Neptunia. It has a cool third-person view and a very unique way of combining turn-based and action RPGs with the free roam around the battlefields and fighting at angles system. Fairy Fencer F uses something similar. I think this is fine as long as whatever game uses the base system does something to mix it up and not feel like the exact game but a different look. And that is exactly what the game we're talking about today did. Much darker and more horror-like than most of Compile Heart's entries. Here is my review of Death End Request for the Nintendo Switch. The plot of Death End revolves around Sheena and Arata. Sheena is an adventurer in what appears to be a fantasy world filled with strange and demonic curses taking over people and driving them insane. But we soon realize that this is not a fantasy world at all, but an older VR MMO video game that Sheena and Arata helped develop in the past. The story then showcases Arata in the real world and Sheena inside the game, trying to figure out where her real body is and how their game got back online in the first place. The story I find to be pretty unique in that you're constantly swapping perspectives between Sheena inside the game and Arata outside of it. It has characters in a game development arena and adds a lot of mystery and almost horror or thriller-like themes that you don't often see in RPGs, let alone ones that go the Sword Art Online route with a game within the game. But considering this is a Compile Heart game, you can expect a lot of lewd humor thrown in. Some of it is pretty tasteful and humorous, and some is very over the top. Pretty expected for Compile Heart, but just an FYI that it is there. When it comes to gameplay, this is a turn-based RPG. As you play through the game, you'll be navigating 3D areas and dungeons as well as fighting enemies in semi-turn-based combat. Now first of all, being a new version of Death End, the Nintendo Switch has all DLC built in. From costumes and super weapons to the DLC character, you can enable and use all of it from the start of the game. This is pretty cool for those familiar, though it can and will break the game for the first several chapters and give it pretty much no difficulty or challenge. The way you progress through this game is one of its most unique features. You traverse the MMO world as Sheena and her party members, but progression will eventually halt when you find doorways that quote-unquote require a special ability to open. This is where the reality element comes in. You can freely swap between reality and the MMO to check on Arata in the real world and progress the story there. Whenever you hit one of these walls, you swap over to Arata and spark story events over there with talking to other NPCs or visiting different areas. Once those events are done, the wall will disappear and you can progress further in the MMO. This is an interesting way of making sure you don't only focus on the game world and forget that reality events are happening at the same time. All of this swapping gives you a lot of story events and a really big convenience with saving your progress. The MMO has camps that let you access a shop and save, but you can also save during pretty much any event with dialogue. You just tap the minus or select button and can save mid-scene like in a visual novel. There's also the bad ending system that gave me a bit of a corpse party vibe as I played. Death End has a ton of bad or wrong endings you can get with special dialogue choices that pop up as you go. While many of these are pretty easy to figure out which one ends badly and which one doesn't, it is neat to see how many bad ways Sheena's journey can end, and that convenient save feature lets you save right at the choice so you can see everything. Getting back to the RPG elements, navigating dungeons and starting battles are very similar to Fairy Fencer and Nep Nep. There are items to find in dungeon rooms and doors to access different areas and floors. It feels just like the navigation in previous Compile Heart titles. It's more in combat that it feels different. Battles take place in 3D arenas with free roam and various commands party members can use against enemies. We also have corruption and launching. There are glitches and bugs around the field that are part of the story, and this will slowly corrupt your character when running through it. Get that high enough and your characters go into a special state where they get very powerful and also very lewd with losing almost all of their costumes. The only real downside is that the corruption does boost you, but it will also hurt you as you collect more. So you've got to be careful if you really want to go into that state. But the feature I had more fun with than corruption was launching. You can input commands in sets of 3 for each turn, and ending a combo can let you launch an enemy across the arena, bouncing off other enemies to do even more damage to themselves and whoever they hit. This is a really fun feature as you can angle your attacks just right to have them hit another one of your party members, leading to a very cinematic follow-up attack launching them in another direction. Unfortunately, it's a two-way street, so you can get launched yourself and all of that pain will go right back to you instead of the enemy. Speaking of pain, Death End is a pretty difficult RPG. Once you get about halfway through it, enemies become very tanky and hit very, very hard. This is what the DLC weapons are there to prepare you for, and also why I don't think you should use them from the get-go. While the beginning of the game will basically be steamrolled by you, you won't learn everything about the gameplay systems you are absolutely going to need when those difficulty spikes happen. And that brings us to content and length. Death End is pretty standard on longevity, taking around 30 hours or so to get through on your first run. This isn't huge, but still gives you a good amount of game to trek through. Next, we'll get to presentation, which is okay. Docked mode looks pretty decent, though a lot of the environments look grainy and washed out. Handheld mode makes this a bit worse with more blurring and jaggies all over the place. It is definitely something you want to play on your TV. With performance, handheld mode is unfortunately very choppy with lots of frame drops, and docked has some as well. But thankfully, like the Switch port of Mega Dimension Neptunia V2, we have some graphical options and effects so we can turn off. This improves the performance quite a bit in docked mode, though it doesn't do that much for handheld. That's all I've got to say regarding performance, so now let's go into battery life. On the original model, Death End has a battery range of 3 hours and 2 minutes up to 3 hours and 39 minutes. On the Nintendo Switch Lite, it has a range of 3 hours and 11 minutes up to 3 hours and 55 minutes. And on the Redbox or V2 2019 model, it has a range of 5 hours and 36 minutes up to 7 hours and 3 minutes. In conclusion, Death End is an interesting and mature take on the VR MMO setting. Now on the downside, the game has a lot of performance issues and grainy visuals, especially in handheld mode. These and the huge difficulty spikes could seem a bit off-putting, but the good mystery narrative can easily keep you playing to the end. Reviews to Go rates Death End Request for the Nintendo Switch a 6.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.